former head coach of the Steelers, now one of the analysts on the NFL Today. CBS analyst Bill Cowher joining us for the Dan Patrick Show. Coach, where do you want to start? You want to go Peyton? You want to go Bounty?
Well, I'll tell you what, the offseason has never been so busy, has it, Dan? I'll just say this about the Peyton Manning. Watching that press conference yesterday, to me that's the blueprint, of how you can see an organization and player have to depart. And that's the structure of today's NFL. That's the landscape. It's going to happen eventually, probably to a lot of other future stars. But they both handled it very gracefully with humility, and again, it was just good to see, and I think it was a win-win on both sides.
But as a head coach, how are you sure that Peyton Manning is able to play?
Well, I think again, a lot of there's some questions out there. I think so that you structure it, but the one thing that he does give you is. He gives you a guy he's unbelievable leadership, and I think he is a great mentor, I think, in terms of trying to bridge a young quarterback and in the meantime bringing an established guy in to make you a playoff contender.
But I'm going to have to write a check for $60 million here. How do I know he's going to be healthy enough to be able to play unless I give him a pro day, something that he can prove himself? Do you think Peyton would submit to a pro day where we get to go in there and everybody gets to watch him work out?
Yeah, you know what, Dan? I don't think Peyton, this is going to be about money. And money will be obviously a part of it, but he understands the questions that are out there, and I think that he will structure it accordingly. I mean, he will make sure that, whatever it is that, when comes week one of the regular season, if they feel comfortable with where he's at, I think until he's taken a hit, I think there's going to be a lot of questions still out there no matter how well he throws. So I think there'll be some structuring of the contract that will protect the team that if he doesn't fully recover and he's not able to play, that they would not have invested that. But, if he is able to come back and play, then he's going to want to be and should be paid accordingly.
You hear a lot about West Coast offense, different than what Peyton runs. Peyton runs his own system. How much of a transition is that? If you're going to go into an offense that's already established, this is how they play, you're going to bring in your own style. Can you do that, and how long does it take to do that if you can?
Well, I think Peyton's played in a couple of different styles. I mean, this offense he's in now has evolved. When he first was there, and a lot of the success they had was with the play action. So I think he's a very cerebral quarterback. I think he'll adapt to any system in there, and I think he's open-minded to that as well. People are talking about him wanting to call the shots. Well, listen, he just wants to be on a football team that's going to be committed to winning, that's got a chance to win. And I think that's all he's really looking for, and an opportunity to be a contributor to that team and in that process. So I think he'll adapt to any team. The most important thing for that team is to be able to adapt to him.
He's Bill Cowher, NFL and CBS analyst, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. How many times were you over on the sideline with the Steelers figuring that you had figured out Peyton Manning?
Well, it was, when you played against Peyton Manning, Dan, the one thing we always realized, particularly we got into the playoffs, is you can't show him anything until there was less than 10 seconds to go on the play clock, because at that point we figured it was too late to change the play. This guy can read defenses as well as anybody, so disguise was a huge part of it. And then even when you do disguise it, he still was able to go through his progression of reads. He's probably the smartest quarterback we ever played against, and always knew where his outlets were. So, trying to play the mental gymnastics game with him was a big part of it.
I was wondering about the Steeler defensive players and wondering what the highlight culture has done to some of these younger players, well, even players who are veterans, who want to make the highlights on ESPN every night. And you make the highlights as a defensive player either by a sack, an interception, or you blow somebody up. What impact do you think the highlights, in particular ESPN's role, has played in tackling, how they've tackled, bounties, everything else that goes along with this?
Well, I think that has changed down through the years. We also, the stadiums where they used to show the big hits from the week before, and certainly that has been something that has been taken off the boards. And, I think safety has been a big part of the transition that the Commissioner Goodell is trying to make, how we tackle, the use of the helmet, defenseless players, and it has been a bit of a transition. I think everyone's trying to adapt to it and really just try to understand what you can and can't do. So, as far as the bounty thing goes, honestly, there's really no place for it. And in my 15 years in Pittsburgh, we never sat there and talked about paying players to try to take other players out. Certainly there's incentive to try to hurt players and intimidate players, but never to injure a player. And that's what you're condoning when you sit there and talk about a bounty. So I'm sure the penalties will be very strict and hard, as they should be.
But would you have a problem if your players on their own collectively said, hey, we have some fun things going on, and we're handing out rewards for certain things that go on in a game? Would you have a problem if they were doing that without them actually telling you, we've got a bounty out for this quarterback today?
Well, there are little pulls that take place. I mean, with players with each room, and they put it into a little kit, whether it's missed assignments or it's a sack or it's a pass or a drop pass. They put something in the pool, and at the end of the year, they all have a dinner with it. But in terms of something when you're putting out, and again, I just look at it and say from the standpoint is, how would you want our players to be treated? How would you want a bounty be put on our quarterback? Listen, it's a quarterback-driven league, and you talk about quarterbacks, you talk about players. That's who we're marketing our league with, and you know what? And they're doing everything to protect him, and I'm all for it. So I would be so against it, and I would definitely never condone trying to injure any player. Certainly, you want big hits, and certainly those are things as coaches you're trying to do, as long as it's within the rules and it's doing something that you're using the proper techniques. And certainly, those are things that you tried to sit there and show to the team, and that's the things that you're trying to promote, but nothing in regards to trying to injure a player.
You think Hines Ward plays again?
I think he can. I think he can in the right system. Again, it's going to be a role that he needs to go. The one thing that he can do, Dan, is he can be a great mentor for young players. And you talk about Mike Wallace and Tony O'Brien, they'll tell you that this guy studied the game and he was self-made. So he is a great mentor for receivers. It's just going to have to get him in the right role, because he certainly has lost a step. And the thing about being a third or fourth receiver is not going to give you any on special teams. So it's going to be in the right situation, but I think he can certainly help a team.
Could you ever see him playing for the Ravens?
I don't know, but I don't know about that. But, that's the thing about the NFL. The landscape has changed. It's the things you never thought you would see. You could see. Who would have thought Brett Favre would ever been playing for the Minnesota Vikings when he was in Green Bay? So, again, nothing would surprise me.
All right, here's the final question. If you're the Ravens and you have a chance with Peyton Manning, Joe Flacco or Peyton Manning?
All right, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's a young quarterback. He's a guy you're building it around. He took a great step this year. I say the same thing about the New York Jets with Mark Sanchez. I think, again, the situation is if you have a situation with a quarterback that's not really proven themselves but young, that's the ideal situation to me to bring a Peyton Manning in. He's going to give you 3 productive years, hopefully, maybe 4. But in the meantime, you're able to mentor a young quarterback a little bit like it was done with Aaron Rodgers up in Green Bay behind Brett Favre. So I think that would be the ideal situation to bring a guy like Peyton Manning into.
Good to visit with you, Bill. Hope you have a good offseason.
Thanks, Dan. Always a pleasure.
Bill Cowher, NFL and CBS analyst.